Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to MST.TV. This is Nishi here bringing you all another Market Watch episode. So some of the cooler reveals that we got over the last week or so were the new Metalfoes support cards coming out in Blazing Vortex, something that I personally am really excited about. With those reveals have come a ton of smaller shifts on the market, but also a lot of potential for future shifts depending on just how strong the deck will be in the future. So today we are going to be trying out something a little bit different. So rather than a Market Watch where we talk about a number of assorted cards, today we're going to be looking at cards specifically as they relate to the Metalfoes archetype. Some of these will have already spiked in price, whereas others won't quite have spiked up yet, but have the potential to go up in price over the next couple of months as the hype for the theme builds up. The idea here is that I want to give you guys an idea of how I try and identify cards to pick up that have the potential to go up in price whenever some big news like this is announced, so that you all can apply these ideas and concepts for yourselves. So if you guys enjoy this type of video and you want to see more like it in the future, please let me know by giving this video a like rating and leaving a comment in the comment section down below. Let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I want to do when I'm looking at new support is break down what I know about the archetype, or learn as much as I can about it and see how the new cards will mesh with that strategy, right? Sometimes the new support can be underwhelming, in which case I won't really look at too many of the cards at all. In this case though, the new Metalfoes cards are actually very useful, and when you combine them with some of the other cards that have come out since the Pendulum era, they're actually a really strong deck and have some really neat plays. Really basically here, right, when we think of pendulums, we are automatically going to think of link monsters because we need to open up zones in order to pendulum summon multiple monsters out of the extra deck. Outside of that, we know that Metalfoes are normal monsters that are also treated as spell cards, so cards where we're able to pull vanillas out of the deck are pretty abusable, as well as cards where we can reap some sort of benefit through the activation of spell cards. I'm sure that you guys will be able to see what I'm talking about just glancing through these deck lists here, but we'll bring them up throughout the video as well. Even if you don't quite understand how the deck works or functions, we can typically count on someone else knowing about the deck or trying out the new support, and we can see what ratios and lists those people have chosen to play to give us a baseline idea of what to expect. Here I'm taking a look at 3 different deck lists from replay videos that were shown online, as posted by Lithium, Dual Evolution, and Yugioh Tube. Huge shout out to those 3 guys. So in each case, we can see some cards that are common between all 3 decks, and other cards that maybe not everyone played, and have a general idea of what we should be looking for. Okay, so really obviously first we have to take a look at Gull and Volflame, 2 of the vanilla Metalfoes monsters where the only holo versions are super rares from OTS tournament packs. These cards are basically just vanillas that have the same effects as all of the other Metalfoes cards, where you pop another of your cards to set a Metalfoes spell or trap from your deck to your side of the field, but these 2 are among the bigger ones in terms of stats. These 2 did spike in price back a little while ago, and I believe we did cover them on Market Watch back when Metalfoes support was first confirmed, but we didn't know what the cards were exactly or what they did. They did jump up in price to around $20 each or something ridiculous like that for a very short while, but for now we are down to a much more reasonable $5 to $6 a piece. This is specifically for these 2 because they are from a tournament exclusive pack. Silvered and Steelen, the other 2 vanillas, as well as Bismugear and other holo cards from the strategy, are also supers, but they're available from Pendulum Evolution, which is just a side set, so they're much more widely available. So yeah, if you really want to bling out your Metalfoes, you'll have to pick up these super rare versions, though if you are okay with lower rarities, the rares should still be available for under $1 or so. Now, if Metalfoes become a top tier deck, I could see these cards potentially hitting $10 each or so, but that is very unlikely. For now, I think a very realistic expectation is for these cards to stay steady between the $3 to $5 price range for the next little while, until we see some sort of confirmation about just how good or bad the Metalfoes deck really is. Next up is one of the most important extra deck monsters for Metalfoes to have available. We have full Metalfoes Alkahest. So this card, from what I can see, was run at either 1 or 2 because it provides a very useful form of disruption. It's basically like a crackdown where you can equip an opponent's monster to this card and steal it from their side of the field, but then you can also fuse using the equipped monster as a fusion material. What's also worth noting is that you can make this card very easily during your opponent's turn with full Metalfoes Fusion, the quick play spell card, providing you with some disruption, even if your opponent were to hit you with something like Dark Ruler No More. This card does just have 2 printings available, an ultra rare reprint that you can still get for like under a quarter, and the original secret rare from Invasion Vengeance, which is about $7 a piece. Obviously, people are going to go after the original first edition print as the highest rarity form, so if you happen to have those lying around, then congratulations, you have a chunk of change there. In the meanwhile, the ultra rares make really solid trade bait that you can stuff into your binder and hopefully use to trade up towards something a bit more valuable, since you probably have a ton of them sitting around in your bulk anyways. Another fusion monster from the Metalfoes archetype that we're going to take a look at here is Metalfoes Mithrillium, a card that is looking like a pretty standard 2 of in the deck. This allows you to shuffle 2 Metalfoes cards from your graveyard back into the deck to bounce a target on the field into the hand. This is an incredibly useful and important effect for a number of reasons. One, most importantly, it allows you to recycle key cards like Combination and Full Metalfoes Fusion from the graveyard after you've used them, so that you can pull them back out again using the Pendulum monster scale effects. Secondly, it can bounce a Metalfoes scale back to your hand to reuse it, since none of them are a hard once per turn effect. And then thirdly, you can of course use it to break through an opponent's board to help potentially set up some sort of OTK. Mithrillium is such a key card in the deck that it is absolutely something that I would be looking to pick up, especially if the deck starts building up a lot of hype because of its relatively low price point at the moment. Right now, you can still buy secret rare copies of Mithrillium, which is actually a reprinted version, for around $2 each, and then either the original or Megaton reprint ultra rares for under $1, which is actually really affordable. I think that as people begin to think of Metalfoes as an actually solid tier 2 deck, then more and more people will look at picking up the card, and I have this pegged as one of the cards that is slowly going to increase in price as we move closer to the TCG release of Blazing Vortex. That being said, I think that if you can pick this card up for around $1 or so, or as a throw-in in a trade, it's a really solid card to grab now with lots of potential to increase in price. Okay, so while it's great to look at cards from the archetype itself, a lot of the time we're looking at cards that aren't necessarily archetype specific cards. Generic cards that happen to synergize well with the archetype can be what sets the deck over the top, and it can lead to some really significant price spikes. Now, maybe it's kind of unfair, but Magician's Souls happens to be like completely broken in Metalfoes. I'm sure all of you guys noticed that all of the deck lists that we looked at the beginning of the video played this card at 3, and for very good reason. Basically, you can use your pendulum scales to search for Metalfoes Combination, and then when you send Combination with the effect of Souls, you get to draw cards for Souls effects, as well as trigger the effects of Metalfoes Combination and search for Metalfoes cards out of your deck. So it's like you're getting double the value for each card that you send. Honestly, if Metalfoes have any sort of meta relevance, this will 100% be the reason why, kind of like the effect that it had on Spirals back when it first came out. Now, Magician's Souls is currently anywhere between $75 to $80, which honestly isn't horrible, given that at one point this card was $120 to $140 a piece. Even at $80 though, that's still a lot to pay for a single card, though to be honest, if Metalfoes do start building up some sort of hype, I could very easily see Magician's Souls going back over the $100 mark. On top of that, with Legendary Duelist Season 2 scheduled to come out in January of 2021, I don't really see us getting a reprint of Souls until this time next year at the earliest, so that's quite a while that you would have to wait to get your hands on a cheaper copy of Souls. This one is entirely up to you guys. If you feel like you have the budget for this card and you really want to play Metalfoes, then you'll probably want to pick this card up now before too many people start buying them up off the market and it goes up in price. But at the same time, it is totally understandable not wanting to drop over $200 on a set of cards when you can't even play in big real life events at the moment. Speaking of how good Magician's Souls is, it's an important enough card for the deck that it actually justifies playing another Pendulum card just to search out Magician's Souls. Magical Abductor is a Pendulum monster that, while it's a monster on the field, gains a spell counter each time a spell card is activated and resolves, and then allows you to remove 3 spell counters from it to search for a level 1 spellcaster monster from your deck. This makes it really easy to search Souls out, since each Pendulum skill that you activate counts as activating a spell card, so you could simply activate 2 skills and then 1 other spell card and you have access to Souls through the Abductor. So yeah, this card is probably necessary in the Metalfoes deck because it gives you that extra access to Souls, which is needed to help push the deck over the top. Now, Abductor does have a few low rarity printings, but it does have just 1 holo printing available as a super rare from Pendulum Evolution. These supers are only around $2 at the moment, so if you want to have your Metalfoes ready and blinged out, you should probably look at grabbing them before they become a $5 card. If not, you do have lots of common and rare printings available for less than $1. So there's one last main deck monster that I want to take a look at here, and I think it's a bit less of a standard choice, at least in terms of the Metalfoes builds that we'll be looking at moving forward. Rescue Rabbit used to be a really cool card in the deck, since you could use it to bring out 2 level 4 or lower vanilla monsters with the same name. I feel like this card is only okay as a starter now. It's still good and you can pendulum summon it out if you used your normal summon on something else, but it's not really what you want to rely on too heavily, because it can be very easily disrupted by cards like Ash Blossom or Effect Veiler. From those lists that we saw at the beginning of the video, 2 of the 3 lists played 3 copies, while 1 chose to omit it completely, and I personally feel like it's a relatively underwhelming option, to be honest. Despite this, I fully expect Rabbit to catch a lot of people's attention, strictly because of the history behind the card and the prominence that it saw in the Dino Rabbit format as one of the most highly sought after and expensive cards in the game. We've already seen a pretty significant price spike in the price of Secret Rare First Edition copies, with the lowest ones on TCG Player at the moment being about $40 a piece, though you can still grab Secret Rare Unlimited copies for around $25. Then of course, there are the Super Rares, which are about $2 each, and the Commons, which are around 50 cents. I feel like Rescue Rabbit is one of those cards that is going to remain expensive because of the history of it, and not necessarily because it's good at the moment, even though hype for a meta deck is what may have driven it up in price in the first place. That being said, it's a card that I would try to move if you are holding on to some extra copies, though it's not the kind of card that you have to discount super heavily to try and move really quickly, because I think that for a card as iconic as Rescue Rabbit, it'll be able to maintain its inflated price for quite some time. Now onto a couple of spell cards here. We'll first take a look at Painful Decision. This is basically a reinforcements of the army for a level 4 or lower vanilla monster, but you have to dump one into the graveyard in addition to adding one to your hand, so you have to have 2 available in your deck in order to search for it. Usually that's okay, right? Because you have 3 valid targets that you run 3 copies of each, so Painful Decision should always be live. Despite how useful this card looks, it is something that you'll want to run just at 2, because you can only activate 1 per turn. So far we've seen the original Dimension of Chaos Secret Rares bought out to the $5 mark, yet the reprint Secret Rares are only $1 or 2, and the commons are under $1. Personally, I don't really care if I'm playing the original or reprint Secret Rares, so I'd be more than happy to pick up those reprints for $1 a piece. Of course, because the commons are available, that's going to limit how high the reprinted Secret Rares can go in price, because accessibility of the card is less of an issue. If the card wasn't reprinted as a common, we'd probably see both copies well over the $10 mark, kind of similar to what we're seeing with Mega Thestalos now, but oh well. I do actually think that the reprint Secret Rares do make a decent hold for now, because they're so cheap at only $1 each, and because really, unless you're looking at the set code specifically, you can't really tell the difference between the 2 prints, so even those Secret Rare reprints will really slowly go up in price over time. The other spell that I want to touch on briefly here is Summoner's Art. Now personally, I find this card kind of annoying. Apparently the consensus is that you play 3 copies of this card in the new Metalfoes builds though. It searches for a level 5 or higher normal monster, so in Metalfoes you can only search the Volflame, which is the level 7, but because this card isn't a hard once per turn, even if you draw 2 copies of it, you just get access to the 2 extra scales out of the deck, and then you could pendulum summon them out or use them as scales anyways. Theoretically, it could be a brick if you drew like 2 Summoner's Art and then 2 Volflame. I don't think that's really that likely. I think I'm just salty because I played like the Scout and Monolith package to search off of this card, and it reminds me of how I always managed to draw the Monolith, but whatever, I'm over it. Anyways, for those of you who were playing back when Clifforts were a thing, Summoner's Art was actually at one point a $10 rare because it used to have only the 1 printing available as a rare from Tactical Evolution. Now, however, it is much more affordable with a structure deck printing and 3 holo versions, so even if you want that Astral Pack super rare version, you're looking at only paying around $2 each at the most. This card I'm including in here strictly because I want to warn you guys against picking up too many copies of this card, because I know some of you may think that it could go back up to the prices that we saw a few years ago. The card definitely has way too many printings now and is way too accessible for the card to be anything more than a couple of bucks. So for myself, I would just have my set available to use and not bother investing in this card. So this next card is one that I was actually going to talk about in another video, but it fits in this video anyways. I think that Celine, Queen of the Master Magicians, is absolutely a card that you should all be looking to pick up now. In Metalfoes, this card is actually really amazing because of how you have access to it through Magician Souls. Souls helps you go into it and then go into access code Talker as well when you bring it back with Celine, which can be a really big way to help blow through your opponent's board. It's also really useful because of its link arrows, opening up 3 zones with which you can pendulum summon out monsters from your extra deck. On top of this, I believe that Celine is starting to get some attention as a generic extra deck option as well for decks that are running Effect Veiler, as it allows you to go from Halki Fibrax directly into access code Talker to win games single-handedly. The card only has the 1 ultra rare printing from Dual Overload, which came out just earlier this year, so I think it's going to be quite some time before we see the card reprinted, but with more and more people looking at running this card in their extra decks, I think it's definitely something that you guys should be looking at grabbing and holding on to while it's relatively affordable. With a price of around $7 lowest on TCG Player at the moment, I would be actively trying to pick them up at around maybe $4 in cash or $5 in trades, and then sitting on them for a while. I could definitely see this card hitting at least the $10 mark, maybe even $12 to $15 in price if it continues this upward trend in play. If you're looking at playing Metalfoes, I think it's a card that you should absolutely be picking up right now, but even if not, I would recommend grabbing this card if you have the opportunity. Alright guys, one last card to take a look at in this episode, and it is Electromight, the banned Metalfoes card that everyone seems to really miss. Honestly, I don't think we're going to see Electromight come back anytime soon. It made Pendulum decks all kind of really streamlined, where they all had to make the exact same play, or else they were just ending on a worse board. I think that when a card is so strong and polarizing that you're forcing all the decks from an entire mechanic to centralize all of its strategies around going into you, then yeah, it's probably a bit of a problem card. Anyways, that being said, a lot of people are apparently speculating that because we are getting Metalfoes support in the future, Electromight just might come off the ban list once again. We just saw that with Rusty Bardiche coming off the ban list in order to support Phantom Rage, so it's definitely a possibility. Anyways, Electromight is back to being a little bit more of an expensive card at $14 for the original print and $10 for the reprint, both of which are secret rare versions, which is obviously up from whatever price it fell to after getting banned. So yeah, this one is really up to you guys. Personally, I think that Electromight is more broken and degenerate than Rusty Bardiche, so I don't think that we're going to see it come back anytime soon, but you never know what Konami is going to throw at us, so it's definitely a possibility. Alright guys, that is it for today's Market Watch episode. I know I am really excited for the new Metalfoes support coming out. I still have my entire core from back when I played the deck before, so I'm really excited for it, and I'm also looking forward to seeing all of the other new archetypes that are going to be getting support in Blazing Vortex. Anyways guys, if you enjoyed today's video, please make sure that you hit the thumbs up button for me and let me know. Also, tell me in the comment section down below what you guys think about the Metalfoes archetype and the way that the market is reacting, but also what you guys think about doing the Market Watch episode this way. I know it's a little bit different from what I usually do, but I wanted to try changing things up a bit to see what you guys would think. And also, if you haven't already and you want to see more great videos like this one, make sure that you hit the subscribe button to get all of the latest and greatest content from both Tombox and myself. And until next time, guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.